Hi, folks. Welcome to the Future of Faith podcast. I'm Josh Packard, the co-founder of Future of Faith.
I'm Keedren Boston, ministry practitioner here at Future of Faith.
In each episode of this podcast, we're going to break down one key research finding from our brand new study about listening and faith formation. I'll give you the national perspective, trends and insights.
I take Josh's big fancy data and make it, useful. Spoiler alert. Not everything works, but I'll keep it real with how it actually plays out in ministry.
That's right. We believe listening isn't just a skill, it's a sacred tool.
So let's talk about what happens when listening leads the way.
This is the Future of Faith. Hey, everybody. This is Josh. I'm so excited. We're bringing you the very first episode of the Future of Faith podcast. And the whole thing, this whole first season, for the next 9 or 10 episodes, we'll see, Keedren, how long we want to do this for. We've got some ideas, but we'll see how long it lasts, right? This whole first season is dedicated to unpacking some of the data from this brand new study that we've just done at Future of Faith, where we're taking a look at what happens for a person's faith when they have somebody who will listen to them. So for a long time, we've known that listening is impactful, especially for young people. But I think a very real question about this has been, well, is impactful how? Like, does it actually impact their faith? And so that is one of the things that we're going to be getting into. And this study came through in last year, 2024, through the help of a lot of really, I'm so proud of this group of people that came together saw the need for this kind of project. And you'll be hearing from some of them throughout the season. You can go and see the whole list of people at futurefaith.org. /sacred listening study. Okay. So you can read all about it. You can see the upcoming updates that we'll be publishing there. We'll be releasing white papers and all kinds of data points, really cool slides that you can use in sermons and other things. And you see our whole list of sponsors there, like Good Faith, New Wine Collective, Our Sunday Visitor, Fuller Youth Institute, Ashoka Spiritual Changemakers Initiative, 1001 New Worshiping Communities, Flagler College. And one of the coolest things about this list is that it's incredibly ecumenical. So we've got all kinds of different Protestant groups, and we've got several Catholic groups on there as well. Not to mention some groups that fall sort of outside of traditional denominations and religious expressions, who just understand the need to explore this intersection between listening and faith formation. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive into this. I think that this project is really important. But look, y'all aren't here to hear me. I'm just the guy who runs the numbers. We've got Keedren Boston here. He's the ministry practitioner at Future of Faith. He's doing this every day on the ground. Keedren, tell us a little bit about why you think listening is so critical for the people you work with, the kids and young adults that you see every day.
Yeah, man, Josh, first of all, man, I just thank you and all of y'all for doing the work to kind of share with us what's happening across the board, because it's easy for us to just focus on the mission at hand, what we're seeing, I guess boots on ground, but it's definitely a blessing to know and to see the wider range of what's actually happening. So y'all help us with that perspective. But I think listening leads to understanding, right? And when we understand better, we lead better. And so that's why this is important to me, because I want to lead better. And my mother always used to say, she still says, understanding beats the world.
Yeah, that's great. Understanding beats the world, right? And if you listen to somebody, you can't understand them. And I think that's such a great point. So this study, and Keedren, by the way, Keedren's going to be with us the whole season. It's me and Keedren. Like, he's not just here on a one-time thing. This is the whole setup. This study is a nationally representative study. So every time we talk about numbers, you're going to hear numbers that are, indicative of the entire country. But we also, very critically, for those of you who are interested in youth specifically, we oversampled for teenagers. So when you hear us talking about teenagers, we actually went back and surveyed at 1,000 additional teenagers, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
And we did a bunch of qualitative interviews as well, which we'll get into some of the data from that later on. But one data point, just to get us kicked off. It's the very first episode. We're just introing this. Keedren, this is the thing that got me so incredibly interested in this study. I mean, I've been hearing, like, when I go out and give talks, or when we get emails from people at Future of Faith, we hear all the time that, like, something like this, I keep working harder and harder for less and less results. Can you help me figure out what's going on? Like the programs that I used to run, they're just not doing it anymore. And I think you've had a similar experience to that earlier in your career. Yeah.
Sure. Yes, most definitely. Most definitely.
And that was the thing that got us like, I was like, man, if we can help to solve this problem or shine a light into it, give some insight in any way, like that's a place where I want to dig in and do some work. Okay. So we sensed that something was shifting, and we'll get into some of those shifts in future episodes, but I think it's encapsulated in this data point. So we asked, among a lot of other things, right? We asked people, where do they grow? Like, when do they grow in their faith and spirituality? We gave them a bunch of options. And this is the full sample. So now we're talking 13 to 55-year-olds. 67% of them agreed that when somebody sits and listens to them talk about their beliefs without judging them, they grow in their faith. Okay, now that's not surprising, right? Like somebody listens to you, like, okay, cool, I get to talk about my faith. Now here's the surprising thing. When we said, okay, maybe you're just a person who's like inclined to grow in your faith. Like that's cool. What happens when you hear a sermon? How many of you would agree that you grow in your faith and spirituality when you hear a sermon? And only 44% of people said that they grow in their faith and spirituality when they hear a sermon, compared to almost 70% that grow when they hear when they get to talk and somebody listens without judgment. Now we go one step deeper. Okay, so I'm just drop that out there and just let it sit for a second.
Yeah.
One step deeper for teenagers, same number at the top end, 67.2%, nearly 70% of them say they grow when somebody listens to them talk about their beliefs without judgment. But only 32% of them say that they grow in their faith and spirituality when they hear a sermon. It's almost twice as high for teenagers. In other words, like the impact of listening is so much higher than the traditional ways of delivering, what we would call spiritual formation or growth or content. Now, I'm not saying that sermons are bad. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I think the world might be changing a little bit, right? And Keedren, I'm wondering how this hits you as somebody, again, who's doing this work every day.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. And the good thing about data is it really helps us to ask better questions, right? We don't have to assume what's happening. I was with a group of students at a high school, and of course they knew I was coming in. They knew I was what I do in ministry, youth pastor and youth leader. And so they were already geared with their questions. And one of the things the students said is that they want to make sure, like, they can go to YouTube to get a motivational speech. They said, we can go online to learn about things. Now we know that online, of course, there's everything. So you got good, bad, and the ugly. But it was interesting to me because these young people are saying, look, we want relationships. We want to make sure that the connections that we have are real. And so what this data says to me, well, I think what screams is the fact that I want you to care about what I think, right? Before you tell me what to think. And so I think if we can listen a little longer, we'll understand them and to be able to truly help them navigate. But it's important for us to listen in that way. And I think this data speaks to that very point. Like, sermons do work, but I also can go somewhere else. I can check out my favorite pastor or leader online who is listening to me, who is actually connecting with me and spending time with me. So, that's interesting.
When we did the qualitative, so we did like a subset of interviews with people to dig into like beneath the surface of these numbers a little bit. And I could I have sensed this for a long time. People saying like, okay, well, sermons can be helpful, but like I can get the world's greatest sermons on a podcast or whatever. I don't need my local pastor giving me a sermon, who might not be as good as what I can download, from Andy Stanley or TD Jakes, out in Dallas or whatever. Like, and what they said, but I didn't understand why specifically that was until these people in these interviews started saying things like, well, look, when somebody stands up there and broadcasts a message, maybe it's got some facts behind it or some like learning behind it, but it's not hitting me. Like it doesn't know my situation. Like the person behind the pulpit doesn't know what I'm going through. The only way somebody can know that is if they sit and listen to me. And so I thought that was just such a useful level of insight that they were like, well, I have to filter everything. And like, it's not, this isn't really made for me.
Yeah, man. And that's interesting. Because there are some great leaders out there and teachers, right, that we can
Yeah,
learn from.
totally.
And with that being said, community matters as well, right? And so being able to have a community, a faith community, also have a leader that you trust, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of times, even if I'm not connected to the lead pastor or the leader in that way, the people that they have put in place and the community and the culture that that leader has built allows me to feel like I belong. And so now it comes full circle, in that way. And I think that's important. Like I said, I can only really speak to at this point for this aspect. I would be interested to hear some of the people that are adults that feel like, that 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting to hear what they have to say in that way. But I do understand the youth and the students that feel like I want someone to actually listen to me first, because I do have something to say and I have questions, right? I have questions, and we don't ever want to speak to questions that they're not answering. They're not asking, right?
Yeah.
They're not asking. So like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, you're speaking to stuff that I don't even have a concern about. But if you listen to me, then you can know what concerns me. And then now we can move forward.
So well said. In fact, I had a young person tell me that not too long ago, a year or two ago, say, it feels like all these adults in the church are so like concerned with answering questions that I'm not asking in the first place. They're and
true.
because sometimes I think like adults get like us a lot of times we get carried away thinking that they know the lives of other people. I wrote this thing on LinkedIn, this little pencil crayon drawing graphic where I was like, the only data point that really matters is what is between you and understanding the life of the person across the table from you. That like we can have, it's great to have all this national data. Like you said, it helps us to know, it gives us an idea of what to look for.
Right. For sure.
But at the end of the day, like it's you sitting across, in your case from students, if you're running small group ministries with adults or whatever, like, you're having coffee, that's the data point that matters. And I think one of the to me, the really surprising thing here, and I'm curious about how do you think that that your staff and volunteers would take this, that they're not saying in these data that like it's nice to be listened to or that like I feel like I have more power when I'm listened to. They're saying that just being listened to actually deepens their own faith and spirituality. How do you think that would hit with your, like, I don't know if you shared this internally yet. This is the first time that we're talking about it. Do you think that would come as a surprise to them, that it's not like you have to listen to them so you can find something out so that then you can like tell them the truth in the right way or something, like just listening could do it.
I think it would be intriguing. I hadn't shared this yet, but I think they would be intrigued by that. Even for me, like it's not something that it sounds normal. Like it's kind of like, man, that seems counterintuitive, right? Because as an adult and as someone with experience, I won't say I'm an expert, right? I may have some experience in that way, but we already think that, no, we've had some experiences, so we can teach them something. And that's how they learn, by us telling them what to know. Right. Versus really them saying, no, I need you to listen to me first and let me tell you my perspective and where I'm at. And then that helps me kind of lean in, or like the young folks say, lock in, So, but I think they would be intrigued by this. I think it's interesting, and it helps us to ask better questions and to lead better when we have an understanding of what's really happening. So we're not going down a path that's going to lead us nowhere when it comes to spiritual growth and faith formation, because that's what's important.
Have you, Keedren, I don't know, like you and I know each other, but I don't know this about you. Are you a writer? Have you ever tried to like write a book or anything?
Man, I write a lot. I have a lot of notes. And so when I have thoughts, I just kind of
okay. So this will make sense to you then, right? Like the common thing about what writers say, I hear this all the time. I've written books, but this is not true for me. Not how I work, but maybe it is for you. Where like, have you ever heard writers say like, I don't really know what I think or how I feel until I write it down? Like I think I hear people talk about that a lot when they talk about journaling. That writing is the sort of way they make sense of the world.
I haven't heard that, but that resonates. that resonates.
So I heard like this is like somebody in their early 20s said, this is again a few years ago, and I was collecting some data, and they said, I don't really know how I think about something until I talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they were saying like the act of talking was the process of figuring out their own thoughts, beliefs, feelings, etc.
Yeah.
I think we often think as adults, especially when we're talking to kids, but even adults to other adults, like we think that what we're hearing is like somebody's full on formed, stake in the ground, well-considered opinion. And sometimes what we're getting, what I think that these data show and what you're talking about, like from the youth in your program, like a lot of times what we're getting is actually just like middle of the process, like them working stuff out.
For sure. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. My bishop, Joby Brady, he says that, the answer is in you. Like it's usually already in your mouth. As you are sharing these things, it's like, and it does tend to happen. So if you listen longer, you'll learn something. But like you say, just processing, I just need to talk it out. Let me just get it out.
Yeah.
And we all need to have somebody to just listen to us so we can get it out. I think that's why counseling has really been important, this last decade, right? Because before, in some communities, especially in African American community, it's been taboo, right? Because you think something is wrong because I need counseling. But people just really need someone to listen to them in a way that's non-judgmental, in a way that makes them feel like, okay, I'm not crazy,
Yeah, I'm not crazy. That's right. I'm not alone.
We're
going to get into all of this over the course of the season. These things that I'm sure you have 1,000 questions if you're listening to this running through your head. Like, does listening without judgment means that I'm condoning everything that they're saying? What if they, what happens if when a young person actually feels heard? How does that impact our relationship? Is it worth the time that it takes, et cetera? We're going to get into all these things episode by episode. We're going to go through a data point or two in each one of them. Here's how this will unfold. So this is the intro episode. In part 1, which will last for a couple more, we're going to talk about what happens when you listen. Why should you listen? And then we'll get into a long meat of the season about how you should listen, about relatability, reliability, curiosity. Those are the 3 hallmarks. We'll get into each of those. And then in the fourth part of that, the 4th episode of that section, we'll talk about what not to do, because our data uncovered what you should not be doing if you want to make me feel like they're being listened to. Yeah. And then lastly, we'll talk about the impact of listening.
Yeah.
We'll talk about sort of beyond faith formation. What are the other kinds of things that listening does for you in your relationship with them? And then we'll conclude with some big takeaways, and that'll take us through this whole first season. We're really thrilled to have you along for the ride in this. I couldn't be more excited to be doing this with my friend and partner here, ministry practitioner Keedren Boston. We're so glad to have him with us at Future of Faith. I think it's gonna be fun, Keedren.
Man, without a doubt, Josh. I'm excited, man. We're gonna keep it going, brother. You have been listening to the Future of Faith podcast, produced by Future of Faith with original music by me, Keedren Boston. You can learn more about the Sacred Listening Study and all the amazing things going on in relational ministry at www.futureoffaith.org. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, where we feature incredible ministries, sacred listeners, and cutting-edge research, all for free, delivered right to your inbox. Thanks for listening. This is the Future of Faith.